what's up and welcome. I'm the one and only West Coast King, and welcome back to Major League 90. Finally, we are back talking Major League Soccer, and the reason I wanted to do this episode today, it is the first day of preseason practice for the Champs, for the Sounders. They reported today, and mostly what we're going to talk about today actually is transfer news, and while the Sounders don't have a whole lot of that going on, aside from they actually did sell a player today, well, not sell a player because technically you can't sell players from one MLS team to another. They traded right back Tyrone Mears to Atlanta for general allocation money, but basically they sold him. It's, again, their process. They're trying to get younger and more athletic, and that was another step on that path, and it was coming a long way off. Everyone knew that was going to happen, so thank you, Ty Mears, for your service. He was a very, very solid right back for us for the years after Yedlin left. He was a very, very good replacement for him, a veteran presence on that team. And we're going to miss him. We are going to miss him. But we have some other players in there that are ready to play. Hopefully they do a good job. But other than that move, not a lot of transfer news from the Sounders in the last few weeks. But the big news coming out of the first day of practice for the Sounders is that Clint Dempsey was a full go at the first day of practice. He practiced with the team. Doesn't sound like he was limited at all. He was cleared to practice by doctors. Now, that does not mean he was cleared to play in games just yet. But this is another step in his road to recovery from that irregular heartbeat. If the Sounders can get him back and he can get himself back to where he was last season for that about 1 month time span where he was there, Ladero had just come in, Smetzer had just taken over as coach, and for that about 1 month, they were elite. Like, they were a scary, scary good team. Now, Clint Dempsey did go down and they went on to win the title without him anyway. But if you can add Clint Dempsey back into that equation, that is, in my opinion, a clear favorite for the MLS Cup once again this season. I'm telling you, with Clint Dempsey in that lineup, they are scary, scary good. But we'll have to see if that does materialize. Hopefully, Clint Dempsey does make a full recovery and is ready to go this season. Now, one team that I have always liked what they've done transfer-wise since they started that franchise is Orlando City. Now, they were close to making the playoffs last season. They were in a playoff spot heading into, I think, like the last month or month and a half of the season. And then they started to fall apart and they ended up missing the playoffs just narrowly. But I do think that they're primed for a playoff spot this year. Now, I don't think that they're going to, win the Eastern Conference and be the #1 seed or anything like that. But I do think that they will nab themselves maybe a 4th or 5th place finish in the Eastern Conference and be a playoff team. Now, they've added some good names this offseason. Veteran American defender Jonathan Spector. He's played in England his whole career, signed with Manchester United at a young age, played for West Ham and some other places, and they signed him from Birmingham City. So he'll come in and be a veteran presence on that defensive line, which is, I think, something that they could really use there. To go along with a couple of other younger players such as Tommy Redding and Rafael Ramos. I mean, they've got some good players in the defense. They also added Will Johnson, a good veteran player, to that midfield alongside Antonio Nocerino. And then the attack. That's where it all is at for Orlando. Kaká, Kyle Larin, Matias Perez Garcia, Kevin Molino. I mean, they've got some outstanding attacking talent. They just got to put it all together. I think this is a season that they start to do that. I think that they're going to be a playoff team. Another team that has been actively improving its roster this offseason is Chicago. I like what they've done there. Adding that striker, Nemanja Nikolic, is a really, really good start for them. They needed some goal scoring in that team. I think he's going to come in and have a huge impact on that roster. Also signing former LA Galaxy midfielder Juninho on loan. That's another good player to plug into that midfield, but I still felt they were missing something. They needed that leadership in that midfield, or that leadership in that team overall. Who's going to be the leader on that roster? And then they went out and signed Dax McCarty from New York Red Bulls in what apparently is one of the biggest trades. Again, you can't trade from one team to, or you can't sell one player to another in the MLS, but one of the biggest money-wise deals in MLS history. Apparently, Chicago sent $400,000 in general allocation money to New York Red Bulls for Dax McCarty. That trails only, I think, Eddie Johnson going from Seattle to DC United. That was allegedly $650,000 as the biggest deal in MLS history, and it was well worth it, I think, for Chicago. That is a huge, huge player. He was the captain of that New York Red Bulls team. Honestly, I'm not sure where that leaves New York. I still think that they're going to be a fantastic team. Again, I've said last year, the leadership on that team, again, Dax was part of that, but I think just the coaching staff, the players, I still think that they're going to be okay, but it's a huge, huge boost for Chicago. Now, does that mean they're going to be a playoff team this year? Not necessarily, but I do think that that gives them a huge advantage heading into this season. I think that they could possibly be around the playoff scenario. I'm not sure if that really puts them over the top just yet, but I do not think that they're going to finish bottom of the Eastern Conference for a third straight season. I think that they're going to climb out of the cellar. I think they're going to have a good year. I think this is kind of the turning point for Chicago right here. I think that they're going to start to improve and once again be a contender in the Eastern Conference. A couple of rumors for players currently in the MLS about to leave, maybe? Well, maybe not. The first one is Darlington Nagbe, and we've talked about him before. He had a look like set to go to Celtic in Scotland. Scottish champions, a European Champions League team. They had real interest in him. They brought him in for a visit to watch the Champions League game between Celtic and Barcelona. He loved it there. It sounded like everything I hear out of him, his heart was set on going there. I mean, it's a big move for him. No, it's not, Spain or England or, a big team or a big league, but they're still relatively a big team. I mean, they're a Champions League team in Europe. You can't ask for much more than that coming from the MLS. So, yeah, it seemed like he was set to go there. Celtic wanted him, but the two teams, Portland and Celtic, couldn't agree on a fee for him. And it looks like he's set to stay in Portland, at least for the first part of this upcoming season. I don't know how much that's going to mess with his head or how much his heart's going to be in it. Playing for a team, he was set to leave. At least it sounded to me like he was set to leave. So I don't know how much he's going to have in him to play for Portland. I assume he's going to, be a professional and still give it his all. I wouldn't expect anything less from him. But he's just had a weird year. He declined a call up for the U.S. national team. He seemed set to go to Celtic, and then that didn't happen. It's been kind of a rough year for Darlington Nagbe. So even though he plays for Portland, and I'm sure you know how I feel about Portland, I do kind of hope he has a bounce back year because I don't like to see anybody kind of go through that. So I do hope he has a return to form this season for Portland. The other player rumored now to be on his way out of the MLS is Sebastian Giovinco, but not back to Italy. If he ever left, I thought it was going to be going back to Italy so he could play for the Italian national team. Apparently, playing in the MLS isn't good enough to get him into that team. That's what the coaches said. If he plays in the MLS, it's not a good enough league, therefore he's not going to play for the Italian national team. I thought if he left, it would be for that reason. But apparently, a Chinese league has put a big offer in on him. They want him in China. And apparently his agent is talking to Toronto to see what's up. If Toronto wants to keep him or if they want to send him to China. I hope that he does not go. Obviously, I love watching Sebastian Giovinco in the MLS, and he's a big part of why Toronto made it to the MLS Cup final last season. I do hope that he stays in Toronto, but it may all be moot anyway because now there's some big news coming out of China. Apparently, starting this upcoming season for the Chinese Super League, which starts March 4th, there's a new rule in place that limits, once again, the number of foreign-born players that can be fielded at one time for any one team. It was, you could have one foreign player from Asia and 3 non-Chinese players all on the field at one time. That rule is now changed. You can now only have 3 foreign players total fielded in your team for one match, which means a lot of the players actually that had already been signed to go to China, some of the bigger name players, are now going to be not able to play and may be reserves on those teams. You know some of those players are not going to want to stay there and be reserves in China. They're going to be looking for somewhere else to go, and possibly that other place to go might be the United States. Now, you're not going to get as big of a contract in the U.S. playing in the MLS as you will for China, but it was just about 11 months ago, I think, that Obafemi Martins left the Sounders and went to China, and there was this big uproar where everyone was thinking, oh no, China's going to poach the MLS talent. That simply hasn't happened, and honestly, I didn't expect it to. They were looking for something bigger than normal MLS talent, something like Giovinco or Obafemi Martins, and there's not a lot of that in the MLS. There's not a lot of players like that here, but the fact that now that could change and the tides have turned and now the players in China might be looking to go to the MLS, that's a huge boost for the MLS. I mean, those are players that might not have anywhere else to play. Obviously, those teams that in China that signed them as marquee players and paid a lot of money for them they don't want them to just sit there and be reserves. That's kind of a waste. So they might look to offload those players, and it's rumored that some of those players are already looking now, because of that new rule, to go to the MLS. So we'll have to see what players they are. There were no names dropped, but could be a very interesting upcoming couple of weeks for MLS teams, seeing if they could get some of those players. Apparently, one MLS team has already put in a request to the league. They have to file paperwork about discovery stuff in the MLS. It's very, very complicated, but maybe some of those bigger players in China could be coming to the MLS as soon as this season. So that is going to be it for this episode. I know I couldn't get to everything. There was so much going on in the past couple of days in the MLS. There's no way I could have covered it all, but I tried to hit on some of the bigger topics. Let me know if you think I missed any of the big ones, or let me know who your team has signed that is going to help your team this season. I can't wait to hear from you guys who you think is going to be a big impact for your team. Maybe a new addition that's looking to come in and change things for your team. But that's going to be it for this one. If you did enjoy it, make sure to let me know by leaving a like below. Subscribe if you're new, and I will see you when we come back for some more Major League 90 as the new Major League Soccer season approaches. See ya.